Welcome to On Purpose with Isha Cogborn. As you've probably guessed, I'm your host, Isha Cogborn. Now, if you are already a listener of the show, you know that typically that is what we do. We listen. This is an audio podcast. But today, we are doing something a little bit different because we've got a great speaker today. And in light of everything that's happening, I want to make sure that we reach as many people as possible with this message. And so today's show is in collaboration with Strive, which is a community support group that I started almost 4 years ago that really helps to take the fear and uncertainty and isolation out of starting and growing a business. And right now, as we're recording this show, or those of you who are watching us live, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. And so everybody's in a state of flux. We're 4 months in. There were some people that thought, okay, this will last maybe a month or so, and then we'll be back to normal. And 4 months later, we're still in a bit of a holding pattern for some businesses. There have been people that have brick and mortar businesses that have been closed and that have opened up again and that have been shut down again, or they just simply don't know what tomorrow will look like. And then there are also some businesses that are absolutely thriving. So it isn't that it's a doom and gloom situation for everybody, but no matter what your situation, whether you're open or closed, whether you're struggling or thriving, one thing that's true for all of us, and that is there is no business as usual. All of us have had to make adjustments either in our own businesses or in the people that we serve, because maybe their lives and the things that they need are different today. But one other thing that is true for us all is that being on top of your money is key to business success. And so today, we have a very special guest that I'm going to go ahead and bring into the conversation.
Hey.
We're joined today by Connie Vanderzanden, and Connie is on a mission to help entrepreneurs live the lifestyles they desire by learning the simple steps, structure, and discipline to create and save money. She's been at this thing for 34 years. She's an accountant. She's a bookkeeper. She has knowledge in a number of different industries. But the biggest thing is Connie is an entrepreneur just like us. And so she's been through the ups and downs just like us. One of the things that I love so much about her story is that she is transparent to share that even though she is a numbers person, that doesn't mean that she's always done everything right. And so there are plenty of things that we can learn today. And I'm just going to tell you, this is going to be a real conversation. We're not going to sugarcoat stuff. We're going to talk. I mean, this is no longer putting your head in the sand and running from money. We're going to talk about it. So Connie, welcome to On Purpose.
Thanks, Isha. I'm glad to be here. It's exciting. Isn't it exciting, everybody?
I'm so glad
talking about money.
Now, I know there are people that have probably intentionally run from this show because they don't want to talk about money.
Yes.
But you know me, I don't shy away from the things that we need to talk about just because we don't want to talk about them. So we're going to talk about money today because it's crucial. But before we jump into the conversation, just tell us a little bit about what you do, and when did you realize that you had a passion for money and helping entrepreneurs deal with money?
Well, let's start with the story because it is the purpose. So I found myself in accounting, and I have done 34 years of it. And I found my way there because I really enjoyed working with the business owner. So 19 years ago, I started my business, and I really enjoyed going out and meeting with them in person. And you could see the weight lift off their shoulders the minute we would have these conversations. And it didn't seem at the time that they were having those conversations, but the stage of the business I was in, my mindset at the time, I didn't realize that special sauce of that until 18 years later when I'm burnt out and I'm like, okay, something has to change, I realized, what do I really love about this business? I don't really love being in the numbers all the time. I obviously, because I didn't look at my own, but I really do love sitting down one-on-one with the business owner and making numbers easy for them to understand and use. And so that's what I do today. I'm a cash flow and business mentor, and I spend my days having conversations with business owners, thinking strategically about how to use their numbers, whether that's getting out of debt or making plans or how to get moved through COVID. We talk about numbers. We talk about how that affects their business. Sometimes it's how they hire. And I get to be a partner with them. I get to collaborate with them. And to me, that's exciting to me to have so much, to see so many businesses be successful and get paid well and really bring their purpose to the world, because all the clients I work with have a big purpose, a big dream. We call it a big kahuna dream. And so that's what I do now. And who knew 19 years ago, that was really the secret sauce. It took me a long time. I'm cute, but I'm not always that smart. So it took me a while to learn that.
I'm so glad you're cute and you're smart. How about that? I'm so glad you talked about purpose.
Yeah.
Because that's the reason that so many of us get into business.
Mm-hmm.
But money is the thing that often stands in the way of so many people being able to really live out their purpose at the level that they want to.
Right.
And, if I think about myself, I started my business 11 years ago, and I had been in corporate for almost a decade, but I wasn't a money person. I was in public affairs. And so it was not my responsibility to do anything other than pay attention to my budget. So figuring out profit and loss, cash flow, all that. I did not have to do that for my role in corporate America. So then when I jump out there and I start a business, I would set monetary goals. I would know what I wanted to make in a particular year, and I would write down some plans, and that would be about the end of it. I wasn't doing anything to project cash flow. I wasn't looking at what was coming in. I wasn't looking at what was going out. Quite frankly, it was just a matter of, okay, here's what I'm good at. I'm going to do this. And the cat's jumping up here, so we might get a little visitor. And, it was really just running on faith. And that's not a way to run your business. But for so many people, we're just afraid of what we're going to see if we look at the numbers, or we're intimidated by it. And right now, the situation that we're in, where maybe there's so much more uncertainty. So if you didn't want to do it before, you certainly don't want to do it now.
No.
What can you do to finally get your head out of the sand? Where do you start?
Well, it starts with the numbers. We have to know our numbers. And a lot of the times during startup, on that first 0 to 3 years of business, it's all about getting the sales. It's about finding the clients, having them know who you are, getting money in. And so looking at your numbers, dealing with them always takes a back seat. And so it's usually the last thing you do at the end of the year. And and for some reason, just dealing with that has a lot of guilt and shame around it. And so it can be ignored. It can be postponed. It happens to way more businesses than you think. So if that's you, this is normal business activity. But as you get to years 5 and 7, when you've figured out how to create revenue, that's when we really have to use those numbers, because if you have plans to grow, to add another location, add team members, you have to know what they are and have to use them as metrics to measure how successful things are, like advertising campaigns, or if there's a client you might need to let go because they're just too much of a pain. So we have to know our numbers. So how can you do that? Well, you don't have to go and get an expensive accounting tool. My favorite is Intuit QuickBooks Online, but you don't have to go that far. I have a client I've worked with that uses a spreadsheet. So you can be that simple. And depending on where you are in your revenue stream, it might not require an accounting tool. I like accounting tools, but I've used them for 34 years. I they're super easy for me. And so for some clients who want to go in that direction, or businesses that want to go in that direction, get a little support. It's, pay a bookkeeper or an accountant 2 hours to help set up and do some initial training. And then that way you can have a more sturdy foundation to bounce off of. But yeah, the black and white of the numbers, so that we can get out of our head, the squirrely in our head where our ego is like beating us up about what we think's going on. We got to get the black and white of it so we can see the actual what's happening. And usually that isn't as scary. It's that listening to the ego and our those things that keep us up late at night. That's the scary part.
I'm glad that you mentioned the possibility of just getting somebody to get you set up, because so often just that initial, where do I go? Everything is a mess. I don't know what I should be looking at or how to look at it. That's the hardest part. Like, for me, people laugh at me because I always hire professional organizers. And one of my best friends is like, you mean you're paying somebody to tell you where to put your stuff? Yes, because my brain doesn't work that way. But once, her name is Sherry, once Sherry comes in and she tells me, okay, we're going to put your mailing supplies here, and we're going to put your office supplies here, and this goes here and this goes there, and everything is set up, I can put everything back in its place. And so it often is that way, even with our financial systems. If you struggle with knowing where to start, or it's intimidating, just getting somebody to get you set up and telling you what to look at and how to keep it going, that can take a lot of the scary part out of it. And that, because we don't like to do stuff that we're not good at.
No. Yeah. I think we can thank our school education for that. We fear the F. We fear that bad grade, but in reality, the accounting tools are super easy to fix for the most part. I've talked to 2 people just this week around this same topic. Like they found the tool that they would like to use, and they've gotten in it, and their brain has just gone blank. And that is the sign of, okay, let's bring in somebody just to help with the setup and a little bit of training. It doesn't have to be huge and ugly about it. And once the tool is set up, though, and you get some rules in place and you automate it, that's going to take care of the big thing. Is like a lot of people, the second place they get stuck besides the tool is that record keeping, that data entry, because we don't want to either deal with paper, we don't want to do that fine detail stuff. Some people love it. Some people, like, that's their favorite thing to zone out at while watching TV. But a lot of people, I don't know what the percentage is, but let's say 60% of business owners do not like that. They have things they would rather do. And that's when you know then that perhaps having a bookkeeper on a regular rotation might be helpful, just so that you have more brain space and bandwidth and energy to run the business and do the things you do love, like sell or whatever service, or be more on purpose, or make an impact on your community.
All right. So we got our system set up. Set up. Then what comes next?
Well, what right now with COVID is we've got the black and white of where you're starting. Most businesses have had to do some type of cash conservation. And that surprisingly does not necessarily mean cutting costs. It just means understanding what they are. Sure, there might be some costs to cut, like I had to give up my co-working space. Shout out to Vita Co-working in Portland. But it might just mean maybe you're calling those loans and asking for a different interest rate, or credit cards and asking for your rate reviews, or insurance. But there's definitely some things that we need to cut, because we need to get to a bare minimum. That's where my beginning financial plans start, or in accounting terms, the budget. I don't like that word, but
the B word,
the B word. But we need a bare minimum so that we know, like, okay, this is everyone has one. This is where we're starting. And then I like to look at, what can you grow into, or when revenue gets back to normal, or when revenue starts increasing, what can I add back? What's my options? When can team members, the call before this, a person wanted to know, like, when can she add the extra daycare for her son, or when can she add the office manager? At what point in her revenue game can she add an office manager so she'd have more time for her work-life balance? So those are the fun things that we get to do with the financial plan. But the first thing you might have to do now that you have the numbers in place is like get used to them, understand what they are, look for some cash conservation, and then you might then start building scenario models. I think the hardest part of COVID right now is actually having these types of conversations. We are so focused on our business about selling and getting out there, and I don't want to say it's like putting on a suit, like where like everything is great and fine and, you know, our business is doing great. We're having to actually be human beings and have conversations with vendors and team members that we probably never had before, because before you're supposed to be the boss, you know, and have everything under control. And let's face it, a lot of us are having some issues with COVID. And we just need to be able to stand there and ask for help. And sometimes that means, again, going back to having a bookkeeper or a coach or somebody with you to help be detached enough that they're not emotionally in the problem with you, but they can see it from a different viewpoint. And so perhaps they can help you brainstorm as well to those different scenarios and who you need to call and what needs to happen.
So let's talk about that, because you mentioned having a coach, having a bookkeeper, just someone who can get you to think through things with some emotional detachment.
Yes.
What are some of the emotional decisions that you see entrepreneurs making that can get us into trouble?
Oh, get us into trouble. Well, in all transparency, we should tell a story from my own background then. I am, after many years of recovery, I have discovered that I am a spender, which means when I get under stress, I spend. I go and look for that shiny bauble. And especially during the growth phase of my business, I was looking for any shiny bauble to solve the problem I had, not realizing that really I was the answer and I didn't need any of those things. But anyway, I spent. So we get into a lot of debt because we're using money to fill a need that we're not willing to acknowledge or communicate. So that's one thing I see, is that people don't know their spending type, and they'll use money to fill in that gaps when they're stressed out or needing something. The other one I see a lot of the time is they're not paying themselves on their household. They're not contributing to their household enough. And so they could be the lowest paid member of their team. And that's just really rough. It's really hard to show up and be your best self if you're not being able to contribute to your household and take care of those finances. And so having the business support you fully so that you can be the best person, the best service provider, so that you can show up and be on purpose and make a big impact on the community is key. And the last one I think is debt. So if you're a natural spender, you create a debt. Debt is stifling. It's just heavy. And when we have a lot of debt, we're so emotionally attached, we can't see the other possibilities that might be there, because we feel like there's no way out, that you have to continue business as is because you have so much just leaning into you. And so when we have a lot of debt, we might not be able to clearly see how we could grow our business, whether that's add a team member or get additional education, like how to get out of debt, or even to like invest in equipment. So those emotional things can stop us. And unfortunately, all those things, that shame and guilt and how we relate to money, we got from our parents, who got it from their parents, and from our culture and from society in general. And we don't ever realize, because we're in the middle of doing business, we're doing that thing, but we don't get to realize that other people's opinions about money is what's controlling what we're doing right now. I have a money coach I like. She says our inner 4-year-old. So at 4 years old, we learned what money was and how to relate to it and what it was used for. So that inner 4-year-old is running the money in your business right now. And so I can see that that's why, as a natural spender, I would hear my 4-year-old in me. You deserve this. You need to go get this.
Oh yeah.
But back then I wasn't awake.
Yes. Yeah, Katie's watching. She says that this is sad. I've been there myself. I know I have too. And Sarah asks, do you have any strategies for coping with being a spender?
I do. So, there are a lot of things about Dave Ramsey I do like. The one thing I don't like, especially as a natural spender and a risk taker, because a lot of entrepreneurs are risk takers, I can't do beans and rice. It's just not something I'm willing to do. And so a natural spender has to have some fun money set aside, or mad money, if you're of the age to remember what the mad comics books were. We have to have a little mad money into that. And it can just be a little bit, $20 a week or just, a little tiny bit. That way you feel like you can go splurge on something and not be so confined with your financial plan. The other things spenders can do, is creating a pause in the spending cycle. When I was working with my money coach, my mindset coach, she recommended that I freeze my credit card. I'm like, what? You're kidding, right? I had my whole body system shut down. It felt like I was going to cut off one of my arms because I just could not imagine how that would happen. And I had to work through that about why am I so connected to this credit card? What's this? It was my spender. It's like, you're going to take away my ability to fill my need for spending. So you have to journal about that. But could you put your credit cards in a place where they're not as accessible, so that you give yourself some pause in the process before you spend? And so nowadays, when I think I would like to buy something, I have to give myself 24 hours. And then if I still want it after 24 hours, then I can realistically look at the plan and see how that could be possible. But yeah, those are two things away: creating a pause and make sure you have mad money, some type of mad money.
Those are great suggestions. Yeah, I am a spender as well, and that I deserve this thing. Yeah, and Katie says the same thing. She says, she still tells herself, I deserve this all the time. Yes, Katie, I feel you. I do the same. And I'll tell you, I particularly did it when I was in corporate because I wasn't happy with what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And so I needed that to fill that void. Yep. Once I started really being in my purpose and enjoying what I was doing, a lot of that spending stopped. So mm-hmm. It was definitely connected to a void. Or if I'm lonely, then I tend to be more of a spender. If I miss my family, things like that. But let's talk about the financial plan. So we know what's coming in, we know what's going out. We've had some conversations if we needed to renegotiate some loans or get rid of some clients or some accounts that aren't serving us. One of the challenging things that I've seen people really struggle with is you might have a program or a product that you're offering that it just doesn't make sense financially. Mm. And I know even for me, I was working with, I had a business mentor. I was going through an incubator program a few years ago. And my mentor had me do 24-month projections. And I had in my mind, okay, here's the program I want to focus on because it was the one I was the most passionate about. But when I looked at that against my financial goals and the numbers that I would have had to hit in terms of how many members I would have had to have in there to hit those goals, it was just like, this is unrealistic. It's not going to happen. And so it caused me to really reshape the strategy in my offerings to make sure they were aligned with my goals, my financial goals. But I wouldn't have known that had I not done those projections. I just would have done what my heart said to do. Oh, they need me. I need to do this. I need to serve people this way. And I would have been broke. And I've done that
Yeah.
before. Doing that literally had me homeless, literally, because you're just leading with your heart and serving with your heart and making every decision with your heart. And most of us who are watching this show, if you're connected to me, you're a heart-centered person. And that can get us into trouble because we aren't always making the decisions that are going to make sure that we stay around to continue serving people the way that we want to.
Right. Right. Well, and I think COVID is also shining a light on that, because there's a lot of businesses that aren't able to do the services that they once had, like restaurants not being able to serve in their restaurants right now. That's only takeout. And so how can they figure out where the profit margin is and what's a good service option or sale product option and what's not? And I think every business I've worked with over the last 34 years have had to struggle with this. One is that businesses usually look at that before they open or when they're setting their prices. And I'm going to, say maybe 50% do, like contractors. They'll set that price, but they might not relook at that price again. So costs can go up. Restaurants, food costs goes up all the time. But if they're not looking at their pricing on a regular basis, they can easily have a product that's not worth. It's costing them more to do than they're selling it for. And so, again, having somebody that's not emotionally attached to your business is helpful. I do think I also have had coaches that have had a set plan and suggested the sales be delivered this way. And I did them that way, but they were never in alignment with me. And I think nowadays we're having an opportunity. COVID's also offering us an opportunity to do business less masculine, less process, less old way, and letting us lean into more of a feminine way of doing business that's really checking in intuitively and with our hearts about what we want to do. So if you have that financial plan, you have your numbers, you know what you need to live, what the business needs to operate, then the next step is to be brave enough to ask for the revenue for it. And it might not be the clients you currently have. It might mean after you look at these numbers that you're ready to level up, work with a different set of clients, maybe add a different offer for these clients that helped you get here, but they might not be the same clients that are going to help you go further. And I had that problem this last year, is that several times I've actually leveled up 3 times in the business. As the business grew and as I got more confident, the people I served changed. And it was hard to let go of who got you there, of what that was, and how to reframe, how to sell to different people. It's been super scary to go and look for new people out there and create a new market. But they're out there because we have to believe that we weren't given this purpose, what our heart's desire is, if there weren't clients out there for us to deliver it. And there's a little faith in that has to come into play. But they're there. We just have to keep asking, keep telling people, keep working towards it.
Oh, that's so good. That is, yeah, that's so good. We got a lot of, oh, yes, that's good over here. And just quick shout outs to some of our viewers right now. Jillian, Brenda, Diana, Victoria, Sarah, we see you over there. And Victoria has a question. And you talked about having a mindset coach. So Victoria asks, what do you say to a person that has a scarcity mindset? And do you feel that this mindset is harmful more than helpful?
Okay, well, I call that scarcity mindset the land of lack, because we're lacking not only in money, but usually everything, all resources, time, people, everything. And it will get us stuck. And that's where that third party, unemotional person is, that can be handy in helping us see that stuck point. But yes, I do think that at some point it's harmful to the business if you have a strong desire to grow and go to a different place. You're going to have to like get over that roadblock, and then but you're going to hit another one. It's not like it's going to totally go away. There is that place about having a very abundant mindset. That doesn't come overnight. Some people are born with having an abundant mindset. And if everyone looks at nature, the squirrels always have enough to eat. But it's hard to get there. It takes some time. It takes some courage to like constantly be positive thinking, because it's super easy, especially if it's your own business and you have nobody else to talk to land in that land of lack. And your ego is like right there to say, yeah, let me beat you up. Let me 2:00 in the morning, let's have a conversation. And until you're able to like realize that ego is not there to beat us up. They're there to keep us in our comfort zone, to keep us smaller, to keep us like safe. And so being an entrepreneur and getting outside that box into that abundant mindset and then into a different space outside that land of lack takes a little courage, takes a little risk. And some of us just need a lot more help to get there than others. And I had to get help to get out of that space. When I first started my business 19 years ago, I didn't understand mindset. I was very employee mindset, like getting a paycheck, everything that came in. I never planned numbers. I never looked at my numbers. So yeah, it's a whole process to go through, but with somebody that's working with you, that's helpful. A lot of the times, the people I work with get frustrated because their bookkeepers and their tax pros might think land of lack because they're very number focused, very black and white. The numbers are the truth. And that's where we want number focused people doing that type of work for us, but they're not always the best people to also help us keep that passion alive for our purpose, help us keep our eyes up instead of down, keep us moving forward. And that's where a coach comes into play. But that's also part of my special sauce. But there are more accountants and consultants that are doing this type of thing. They're seeing that there's a difference between the two and that numbers are there to support us, not to define us. Ooh, that was good.
Ooh, that was good there. Numbers are there to support us, not define us. That's a tweetable. Yeah. That's a postable. Numbers are there to support us, not define us. So we've got a question from Hugo. Yep. He wants to know, what exercises do you recommend to get out of the land of lack?
Oh, good question, Hugo. Good question. Well, there's two. One, and I've gotten this from several people, but I'm going to give Marsha B. What is her process? It's the good girl process, but it's a toleration list. It's one of the first things I do with my group is pull out some piece of paper and write down all the tolerations that you have in your life. Everything from something's broken, something needs to be fixed. You can't believe that wall hasn't been painted. You hate your car because it's always in the shop. Write that toleration list, and it may be 6 pages. Just keep writing. That will show you where your lack thinking is and where the roadblocks are. And once you write them down, you can like go through and like start crossing them off. You're like, oh, that one's easy. I can like go put that away, or I can fix that one thing. Or for me, it was actually, I went out and bought my first car. And that's silly to say, because at 40 years old, I've had cars before, but I had never actually bought a car by myself. Like, gotten the paperwork and picked the car out. It's always been part of somebody else, or my parents bought my first car and brought it, like, here's your car. And I'm like, oh, great. And here's your loan, and you have to pay for it yourself. But it was different. And once you start crossing things off that toleration list, you see more abundance. That's one, and that's a really helpful thing to do. And the second one is practice gratitude, I think, these are the easy things you can do. Like every day, find 5 things that you're grateful for. Because when you're looking for gratitude throughout the day, you're going to see less slack. And then do that, keep doing that type of practice, because I didn't used to, but now when I see a problem or something happens, I'm like, okay, where's the gratitude? Where's the opportunity in this? And what is the learning opportunity? And then I can shift it. But before I didn't, and I would have to go through the same learning opportunity and go hit that roadblock of lack several times. So it just takes practice. So gratitude practice and the toleration list.
Excellent. Great suggestions. Now, if you just tuned in, if you're watching us live, and again, this will be posted both on the On Purpose with Isha treat tonight and our partnership with Startup Life Support TV. So for those of you who are watching us live right now, if you just hopped on, a couple of things that we've talked about tonight is knowing where to start. You've got to get your head out of the sand, look at your numbers, look at the black and white of it, get out of the emotions. If you need to have somebody help you through that process, but you've got to be able to create and craft that financial plan. You talked about practicing cash conservation. Look at expenses that you can cut. Are there terms that you can adjust on your loans? Are there things that you can stop doing? You mentioned yourself that you've moved out of your co-working space to save some cash right now. So are there things that you can be doing to save, stop spending so much, and hopefully be able to build up a savings? Now, even as we do that, we get to the point where we realize, you know what, stuff is just ugly. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you this. I mean, I think back to my own experience. I had been in business at this point for, I think, 5 or 6 years, and things just got ugly, and nothing I was doing seemed to really work. And so I looked at my numbers finally. I had been running from them for so long, but looked at my numbers and realized, okay, here is a number that I need to bring in recurring income to make this thing sustainable. So every month I'm not in survival mode. And I gave myself 30 days to hit that number. And although I got some new clients, signed some contracts, at the end of that 30 days, I didn't hit that number. And I had a contract with myself that said if I didn't hit that number, I had to look for a job. Mm-hmm. And so I did. And I went back to work. And that was one of the most challenging things that I had to do. And I'll tell you, it wasn't even so much for me, but I felt like I was letting other people down. There were so many other people that I had helped to start their businesses. And I thought to myself, well, if they see me having to go back to work to make ends meet, will they then question if it's possible for them? And that scared me. But then what I realized is, okay, I'm having to make a tough decision. As entrepreneurs, we have to make tough decisions. Yeah. And so this is a lesson to be able to share as well. So we know right now, particularly with COVID, we've got businesses that are going to have to make tough decisions, that they're not going to continue the way that they were operating before. Mm-hmm. Share some wisdom around what that process may look like.
Yeah, it's called the power of choice. We have choice in everything we do. And I actually did not realize that we had power of choice until I went to a seminar, and it was like eye-opening experience. And that seems really odd to share that after, I don't know, I was in my 30s when I figured that out, and late 30s. So to be on earth for a long time and not realize that I had power of choice. But it's not always the easiest choice. When I went to, I loved my office space. I had commercial space. It was a great office. And after 6 years, I was still not running. 98% of what came in was going out in expenses. I hadn't been paying myself for 6 years, and I had 50,000 in debt, and it was not sustainable. It was a beautiful office, but not sustainable. But after 6 years of building that, how do you let it go? What do you do? And so that was one of the hardest choices I had to make. And it was the best choice I could make. And so as people are looking at their business, they've looked at their numbers, they've done whatever innovation they thought they can, and it's still not worth it. We have a power of choice. And yeah, it might not be a fun choice right now to say, I'm going to close my business. And I will tell you that on that other side of that, first, you're going to grieve. Give yourself the space to grieve. On the other side of that is an opportunity. And to know that it's there and that you won't have this weight of this business, and you've learned so much from this business that perhaps it's time. It's time to go away so that you have an opportunity to revamp, innovate, rebuild something different, rather than eke along and like push all this money towards it. To it might just be its time. And yeah, it's power of choice, and it's going to be a hard thing.
Yeah. Brenda says, not always easy choices, but we always have a choice. And that is something that we have to remember. But, as you've said, it's an opportunity to step back and to see what we've learned, and to think about the people that we were able to serve in that business in its current state. But one of the things to remember too is that doesn't, just because this particular opportunity came to an end, this business in the way you were serving in that way at that moment, just because that ends doesn't mean it's over. How many times do we hear of people that say, oh, I had 3 restaurants, or I had, a salon here and it closed it down, and then I did this and then I did that. And, even when I look at my own experiences, me making that decision of, okay, I've got to go back to work full time. I'm going to continue to do the business on the side, clients in the morning before work, in the evenings, work on my business on Sundays. But it gave me that opportunity to regroup. And so then 3 years later, I was able to quit and really have a much stronger foundation, instead of continuing to flounder until finally the decision was made for you. And I think that's an important thing too, is, when we talk about the power of choice, the longer that we just put off making a decision or looking at the options that are available to us, the fewer choices we may end up having. Yeah. So don't run from it.
Yeah. But I think when we're in that land of lack too, we're secretly hoping that will happen, because then it's somebody else made that decision for us and it was being done to us, rather than us being the leader of our own life and being able to make that choice up front. I did go through that. I did want something to happen where it was somebody else's choice to close the doors to my commercial space. I just wanted that to happen. And I didn't realize it at the time, but it was a necessary thing for me to go through for the journey I'm currently on. Because now I know what it's like to close a business. I know emotionally what people are going to go through before they do that. And so when I'm working with clients, I can warn them, you're going to have your whole body is going to need to do this. There's a whole thing about grief. Nobody told me I was going to grieve this. There's a whole process. But that was part of the journey of where I'm at now. So it's all leading towards what my current purpose is, and knowing very strongly in my heart that had to happen for me to be here.
Yes, indeed. All right. So let's talk about, you in your purpose, Connie. And I'm so glad
Sure.
that you're in your purpose because it allows other people to be in their purpose.
Yep.
You know, one of the things that we talked about is there's so many people that they're not able to walk fully in their purpose because of money.
Yeah.
And when people work with you, what are some of the things that they're dealing with? What are their struggles and how do you help them to work through that?
Sure. Well, you kind of touched on them a little bit, but I'll touch on them on a bigger scale now. All of my clients have a big dream and purpose. They know the impact they want to make. They know how many people they want to touch. They just don't know how money is going to be there to invest in getting there, because it's going to be more than them. They've got to bring team on. They've got to add tools and equipment. They've got to, even get another coach or get better education or whatever. They have no idea where money is, because normally as an entrepreneur, they are the idea person. They don't want to be in the details of the numbers. They don't want to really play in that area. They're playing in their big vision and purpose. And so that is one way, is like, how do you get that support underneath you, that foundation support? How do we hire a bookkeeper that might support them, and like look at their numbers and like say, okay, now let's create an intentional use plan for your money so you can grow. The other play is that I said earlier is they're tired. They are tired of being the lowest paid person on their team or not getting paid at all. They are tired of that. And so how can you prioritize paying yourself first so that you're well taken care of, so that you can show up for your best self? And a lot of the times the money is actually there, and sometimes they're actually paying themselves. They just don't realize it. So the story is, for myself, is I was paying myself a bit, but I was making a payment on my personal credit card. It never came to me. It went from the business to the credit card. And I was sitting in a mastermind with my coach, and I knew one other person in the room, but there was another 5 people I did not know. And my coaches were pushing on me that I had to physically pay myself a check. Same amount. It's just, I had to physically pay myself a check. And I just broke down. I just couldn't see it. I mean, same thing, no change. But the minute I did it, oh my gosh, everything got easier. And again, it just went to pay the credit card, but there was magic there. And so there is magic in making sure you're paid, and that you're paid well to be the owner, operator, technician of your own business. The other part is, and I think this is part of my journey, is that at some point debt gets stifling, so stifling that we cannot see a way out. We can do other things. Like, I've worked with people who have taken credit card advances to pay off this credit card, to do that credit card. But all it says is more debt, more debt, more debt. And so how do they get out of that? And it's a consistent, slow process, because we didn't normally get into debt really quickly. But how do we get out of that and still pay ourselves well and still grow? But how do we get out of that so we can become our own bank and not have to worry about that? My clients who've done that piece, who became their own bank, who had cash reserves when COVID started in March, they weren't nervous. They had a lot more time to spend on what a PPP or an EIDL loan might look like and how to structure their team. And they really are doing quite well. One client only saw a 15% decrease in their income. Another saw 30%, but that's because they didn't have to worry about it. And so, they all 3 kind of go together, but debt, I think, is mostly where I came from, and now I know that emotional feeling too well. And I'm still a work in progress, because as a natural spender, getting out of debt is also its own unique problem.
Yeah. And I mean, we're all still works in progress. And I think that's the thing to recognize too.
Yes.
We're not going to do everything perfect all of the time. But when we can get specific systems and practices in place that keep us from going off the rails or just doing things emotionally, we're going to get it right so much more often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of the things that you and I have talked about so much through all of this is just the level of resilience that this is building in people. Mm-hmm. Tell me what you're seeing.
Yeah. Well, first off, resilience is a muscle. So not all of us came to this optimistic and ability to see the future and like go for it. So it's a muscle you have to work, and gratitude is part of that. Getting support, sometimes maybe even some mental health support right now. But it's essential for your business. The resiliency is building a cash reserve. And you're going to probably do that really, really slow. When I started it, it was 0.5% of everything I brought in, I put into a savings account. And that was like, how can I live by doing that? And there was a lot of processes I had to go through as a natural spender. I wanted to spend it. I wanted to use it. Thought of it as a plan B, but you just leave it in there and let the magic happen. Because as it grows slowly, that foundation is going to get really strong underneath you in your business. And that's where you can like be firmly planted and have that ability to stand tall in your best Wonder Woman pose or your best superhero pose for the men that's on the call and stick your chest out and know that you got this. The universe is with you. Money is coming in. You can see it, and you can make a choice that's right for your business. And so resiliency is different for everybody, but it starts with having some cash reserves in place so that you can make smarter, less emotionally driven, land of lack decisions and choices.
Now you've got we talked about the systems and the tools, and you have a free resource for our viewers and listeners that can help them out. So tell us a bit about this resource.
Yeah, so I didn't get to the part about the cash handling, the quick cash handling system, but my resource on moneyactiontips.com has a report called the 3 Steps to Increase the Profit in Your Business. And that is the basic cash handling, quick action steps you can do. It's about we talked about knowing your numbers, getting them clear, creating that financial plan. But the cash handling is setting up that savings account and then start putting a little bit of money in the account and letting it grow. And so that is the first 3 steps of my cash handling system. And it's simple things you can do. And of course, then you could also, if you need support, there's an easy button on that page to schedule 30 minutes. Free, complimentary, just a chat.
And again, one of the things we talked about is just sometimes it's having that person to get you on the right track that helps to unravel the fear, unravel the overwhelm. And so having that 30-minute conversation with you is a good way to start that process. But we got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And I hope that people really take that away, because the reality is many of us will say, hey, I'm not a money person. The numbers scare me. And you take that fear out of the numbers. And so to be able to have that conversation, to be able to be honest with yourself about where you are and the decisions that need to be made, that is such a valuable tool. So thank you so much for making that available to folks today.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm really happy with it. It's just the first step, though. It's really is just the first step. So be kind to yourself, because there were a lot of math teachers that were probably not nice to us in the past and told us you don't have a head for numbers. There's a lot of things that we were told as kids, and you have a choice right now to make a different decision. And you just need a little tiny support, a little push in one direction or the other, because I strongly believe that The way to recovery is through small businesses. And if all of our small businesses boarded up tomorrow, I think our economy would go in the tank, because it's essential for us to survive. And so these little things you can do are really key. And so that's why Startup Life Support is important.
Yes. I mean, and that's, we need you. We need you in business. We need you. I'm talking to all of you out here who are watching and listening. We need you to keep doing what you do. There are people who you are literally the answer to their prayers. But if you don't get serious about your numbers, you may not be around to continue to serve them. So please, please, please get over the fear, take the step. And it doesn't mean that you're ever going to be someone who is just going to thrive on crunching the numbers. But when you take that power back, because again, most of the reason we run from it is because we're not good at it. So when we at least build a level of competency around it, it takes that negative energy away from it. So we owe it to ourselves. We owe it to the people that we serve. We owe it to our legacy, so we can, live out those big kahuna dreams, so we can leave something here for the people that are going to come behind us. It is a necessary step. And you mentioned Startup Life Support. And yes, this is tonight. Our show is in conjunction with Startup Life Support. And that community is really focused on helping business owners to develop the clarity, the confidence in the community to build the businesses of their dreams. This isn't building the businesses that other people want you to build or the business that your grandfather built. It's about what you want. And so the focus is on looking at your life, looking at the business. How do those things fit together? We don't want to build these Frankenstein businesses that we end up wanting to run from. And so we've got to deal with our emotions. We've got to take care of our health. We've got to take care of our relationships. We can't neglect everybody and everything under the guise of building our businesses. And so that's where Startup Life Support is here to help. So if you are a business owner or you are someone who wants to be, then I want to invite you to visit Startup Life Support. One of the silver linings that came out of COVID is, we used to be a face-to-face community. We moved online, but now that allows us to be able to expand our community to people all over the country and beyond. So if you go to visit.startuplifesupport.com, you can apply to join us. And yes, there is an application process, because one of the great things about our community is it is intimate and it is safe. So if you're crazy, stay away. We do not want the crazies in the community.
Well, entrepreneurs have a little crazy. There's a little risk taker in them. So
yeah, I don't mind that kind of crazy, but don't come bringing drama. Like, we don't do drama.
No.
But honestly, it's a wonderful community. And there have been so many success stories that have come out of it where people have said, you know what, I would have quit if it wasn't for this community. We can't do this thing alone. And so many of us already work by ourselves. Yeah. And so you've got to have that community around you of people who get it, not just, people who want to support you and are going to tell you that everything you do is wonderful because they love you. That's not always the case. So we want to invite you to visit Startup Life Support. We want to remind you to download that free guide to get that cash handling system set up. Go to moneyactiontips.com. And Connie, I also know that you speak.
I do. I love to speak. I love to talk to people about cash flow and money. I know that's not always the most popular topic, but it's something that we can make fun, and we can talk about it more than just the how-tos. We can talk about the thought process behind it and the things that get us stuck. And so people can go to profitwithconnie.com/speaking, or go to profitwithconnie.com. It's right there. It's a speaking page to learn more about how to get me, because that's my thing. As my purpose is really to support as many businesses as I possibly can to make numbers easy. And if that's to point you in a direction of an accounting tool, or show you how to put the basics of a financial map together, or give this cash handling tool a try. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
And so if I can get paid for it along the way, that'd be great. But, first we just got to educate people and give them opportunities so they can see what other choices they have.
Absolutely. So if you're watching or listening to this and you are a part of an organization that serves business owners, reach out to Connie, invite her to speak. If you have a podcast or do live streams and have guests on that platform, then we want to invite you, reach out to her, get on, because we got to talk about this. We got to talk about money. We can't keep running from it because we need to build sustainable businesses. As we, the government is not going to save us. No. We've got to save ourselves and we've got to save each other. And in order to do that, we got to make some money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think while it does go back to being about revenue, about our top line, it is not all about making 6 and 7 figures. It is what you do with it. That's all I care about is what are you doing with that money? How is it adding to your life? How are you adding to your community? And what are you doing to intentionally use it? But you can make any type of revenue. But if you have a big plan, you probably are going to go for 6 or 7 figures. But let's do it sustainably so that you have a business for the long term.
Yes, that's right. Sustainable. We want to keep you around. So Connie, thank you so much for joining us today. And thanks to all of you for watching and for listening. And again, make sure that you visit moneyactiontips.com to download that resource guide. Go to visit.startuplifesupport.com to join us. And as always, we want to remind you to keep living every day on purpose. We'll see you next time.
Bye.